This week, all eyes will be on Raleigh as the State Board of Elections decides what to do about the ongoing election fraud investigation.
The new Congress was sworn in weeks ago, but North Carolina's 9th District still sits empty. So how did we get here? More than 3 months ago, in the 9th District, 282,000 people voted during the 2018 midterms. But only 905 votes separate Republican Mark Harris from Democrat Dan McCready. That's less than 0.5%. Thanks to mounting evidence of possible fraud, more than 1,100 votes are in question, most of them absentee. When this all began, the man at the center of the state's investigation, Leslie McCrae Dowless, was virtually unknown to most anyone outside of Bladen County.
But we've found that he's been politically active for at least the last decade.
He's worked for county commissioners, sheriffs, and state lawmakers. And he's been questioned before about possible illegal ballot activity. This time, what Dowless and his associates have been accused of would be a Class 1 felony. Dowless is a contractor for Red Dome Group, a consulting firm that works with Republicans across the country. Between them, the two have worked with nearly 24 candidates in southeastern North Carolina alone. Both have worked with Bladen County Sheriff Jim McVicker, who a former friend of Dowless says introduced him to Mark Harris. Through it all, Harris has maintained his innocence, despite the growing stack of affidavits, records, and in-person accounts. He even took the case to court, demanding to be named as the winner of the 9th District race. At one point, the entire investigation was on hold while the state went without a board of elections. This week, the board could decide to either give Harris the win or call for a new election entirely. There's also a chance they pass the baton on to the U.S. House. But it's possible that the cloud over Bladen County and Robeson to its west might finally be lifted, and the web of political dealings and possible fraud, all hidden in plain sight, might finally be straightened out.
WSCT's Emily Featherston joins us now from Raleigh. So, Emily, was Dowless not required to testify at this hearing?
Well, Fran, so the subpoenas that were issued in advance of this hearing were for the people to appear. That does not compel them to testify. In North Carolina, there is a statute that if they are compelled to testify, that can hold them immune for anything that they say about themselves. So in this case, if Dowless had testified about any of his activities that could be illegal, that would have prevented authorities from being able to charge him with those in the future.
Mark Harris's son said he warned his parents about McCrae Dowless before the 2018 congressional campaign. WSCT's Emily Featherston has been at this hearing since day one. She joins us now from Raleigh. So, Emily, today's testimony started with someone else taking the stand for the second time this week.
That's right, Fran. Andy Yates took the stand again this morning. He was on the stand yesterday afternoon when we broke for a recess. In total, he testified for almost 8 hours. Now, today he reiterated what he said yesterday, that he had no idea that Dowless had ever been accused of something like this, and that if he had been warned about this kind of activity, the illegal absentee ballot activity, that he wouldn't have hired Dowless. That testimony came into question when Mark Harris's son John took the stand after a lunch break. John Harris says that he noticed absentee ballot irregularities during the 2016 primary election when his father lost to Todd Johnson in Bladen County in absentee votes. He said that a year later, his father was considering hiring Dowless to work for his campaign, and he warned his father against doing that. Now, after the hearing took a recess for this evening, attorneys for Mark Harris said they were aware that John Harris would be testifying today and that they stand by the integrity of their client.
Emily, several stunning developments today. Do we know when the new election will be taking place?
Not quite, Fran. There are still quite a few things that need to be worked out. The state board has some protocols it can go along with, but after some laws that were passed in December, they have to circle back and decide. So we'll find out in the coming weeks when that will happen. But stunning is the right word. And from the very beginning of today.
Emily Featherston is live now in Bladen County. Emily, what is the problem with that one precinct that has not reported?
Fran, I'm here at the Bladen County Board of Elections building where they are going through the ballots from the Hollow precinct in Tar Heel. Now, they tell me that there is an issue. It's mostly a mechanical issue, but there's an issue with some of the ballots with how they were fed in. I talked to the State Board of Elections spokesperson, and he says that most of the ones that are having trouble are ones that had write-in votes. So they are behind me right now working to retabulate those ballots to make sure that the number of ballots that they have on hand matches up with the number of ballots that were run through the machine. When I talked with that spokesperson from the State Board of Elections, he said that there is a chance that in the initial time that they ran it through that some of the ballots may have been counted twice, and so that's why they are going through this issue right now. And that's especially important because, like you said, the county commission race is within 5 votes right now. There are several people here on behalf of Russell Priest and a few here on behalf of Wayne Edge as well, waiting with much anticipation to see what is going to come out of this final precinct. We're told that this is, again, mostly a mechanical issue, but the State Board of Elections is here working with the Bladen County Board of Elections to make sure that everything is properly accounted for.
New Hanover County emergency officials giving another update on the current conditions as the storm moves closer. And that's where WECT's Emily Featherston joins us live now. Emily, what did they have to say? Give us a sort of a bullet point of what was said during that latest briefing.
Well, Kim, they really focused on making sure people are staying safe. They wanted to reiterate, please do not go outside during the storm, not even during the eye of the storm. People think that that's a safe time to go out, but they just want to remind people to stay in a sheltered place as long as they can until the threat is completely over. Now, we also got an update on the shelters in New Hanover County specifically. They said that there are about 515 people in New Hanover County shelters. All but one are still open. They still have availability. You can still go there. They've also evacuated about 200 people from the county from some of those shelters. We talked about that yesterday. They were taking buses out of New Hanover County.
Now, like officials have said, the water is only expected to keep rising, especially in Kelly. It is going to get even more critical. They are pleading with people, if you are still in Kelly, to call 911, get to the Kelly post office if you can. We ourselves are about to get out of here because it's only going to get more treacherous as the sun goes down. And as you can see behind me, several of these homes have been absolutely gutted. You can see there's insulation and building materials that have been pulled out of this house. This house, along with several others in this neighborhood, sustained 20 to 30 inches of flooding, meaning that most of these houses are not livable at this time. Well, Fran and John, unsurprisingly, New Hanover County led the way in reporting complaints of price gouging. On September 7th, Governor Cooper declared a state of emergency for Hurricane Florence. That declaration set in motion the state's price gouging law, setting the rules for the following 45 days.
Even before the winds and rain from Hurricane Florence had fully settled down, reports of gasoline, water, and food priced 3 to 4 times higher than normal came flooding in from every corner of the state. The total, 853 reports. Everything from a case of water selling for $43 to tree removal companies charging in the tens of thousands. But not every price increase is illegal, so officials are left to ask, is it gouging or just business?
The standard for price gouging it's not objective. It's not there will be a 20% increase, and anything over 20% is price gouging. It is subjective, meaning that it's unreasonably excessive. So we have to use our judgment in making a conclusion about whether we think it is unreasonably excessive.
Gas prices were reported the most, followed closely by food and water. Goods are much easier to investigate because prices can be tracked. With services, though, it's a lot harder.
So we have to use what's an industry standard. We check with consultants and experts, and when we see something that just shocks the conscience or is clearly outrageous, that's when we bring an action.
Those found guilty of price gouging can be forced to give refunds to customers and pay up to $5,000 per offense, and may also be barred from doing business in the state. And while the vast majority of businesses do the right thing, Stein says he hopes cases in court will serve as a warning.
Our view is if we can get out ahead and use those as teaching opportunities to remind businesses that, hey, this law is in effect. The people of North Carolina are vigilant. The Attorney General of North Carolina is on his toes, and we are going to hold them accountable. What we want to do is make sure that it doesn't happen in the first place.
Right now, Stein's office has 3 cases of price gouging in court, all related to tree removal after the storm. We have a full breakdown of the long list of complaints as well as more from the Attorney General's office right now on our website and on the WECT News app. When it rains, all of that water makes its way through the city's stormwater infrastructure and ends up untreated here, and here, and here. And with that water comes the trash, sediment, and other pollutants it picks up along the way.
So in a way, we all have waterfront property because everything we do is going to end up impacting the nearest waterway, and most of these systems, especially here in the lower Cape Fear River Basin, end up in the Atlantic Ocean, and that's where you see impacts to wildlife such as dolphins and whales and sea turtles.
And as the Cape Fear region continues to grow, with more development will come more stormwater runoff, only making the challenge more difficult.
But the pier behind me, it is empty, and it's a sneak preview of what we will see by the end of 2020. A spokesperson for the Atlantic Division told me today that the decision to move the Diligence's home port was made around January 11th. Because of the ongoing government shutdown, he couldn't tell me the specific reasons the Diligence is being moved, but said the Coast Guard regularly reevaluates where its assets are and where they can be most useful. Wilmington has been a Coast Guard city for more than 15 years, but the Diligence leaving doesn't change that. The other Coast Guard units stationed here and around the area are not leaving. Now, right now, there are no plans to replace the Diligence here in Wilmington. That's mostly because the medium endurance cutters like the Diligence are really being phased out by the Coast Guard. So we won't be seeing a similar vessel coming this way. Now, what they did tell me is that this pier behind me, the Coast Guard, as kind of a parting gift for the city of Wilmington, is going to fix it up to leave it in a usable condition for the public.
Port City Marina is at odds with the city tonight. WECT's Emily Featherston has those new details thanks to doing some digging into public records. So what did you find out in your investigation, Emily?
Well, John, those records that I found show the temporary restrooms the marina set up 2 years ago violate city, county, and even federal codes. Spokespersons for both the city and the county say the marina does not have the proper permits for the facilities or the temporary office it has set up. There are also complaints on file that the restrooms are not accessible for people with disabilities. I'm here at 4th and Brunswick Streets, where riders told me sometimes the trolley will just go right on by, not even making this stop. Now, there are several official stops, but you can hail the trolley anywhere through its downtown Wilmington route.
Invasive species can wreck your yard and permanently damage the ecosystem. And WECT's Emily Featherston joins us now. You brought a visual aid. So what is this?
Ashley, this is a piece of a wisteria vine. Now, these are very common throughout the southeast. You may not recognize it without its purple flowers, so they're very popular. People love to look at those. And it's a very common plant here, but it actually came here through Asia, and it's actually an invasive species here. It can do a lot of damage.
Yeah, what kind of damage are we talking about?
So if you think, the best example would be at Greenfield Lake. There, the azalea bushes, which helped inspire the Azalea Festival, are overrun with wisteria, and many of them didn't bloom very well this year because of it. And another invasive species people may recognize are honeysuckles, those yellow and white flowers, and of course Spanish moss. Now, all of those plants spread and take over, and they choke our native plants, and that can disrupt the ecosystem. But it isn't just bushes that suffer. Trees are the most common victims, especially with wisteria. At Greenfield Lake, there are vines almost a foot wide crawling up trees.
Look at that video. That thing is huge. I didn't realize wisteria gets that large. So is there anything folks at home can do to prevent the spread of this invasive species and invasive species in general in our community?
Yes, so I spoke with Professor Melanie Doyle with Cape Fear Community College, and she says the best thing people can do is avoid planting these species in the first place. There are types of wisteria and similar plants that are perfectly fine, but she recommends doing research before you go shopping so you know what you're looking for. And stores, especially on-time retailers, will sell you an invasive plant, so Doyle recommends always shopping at a trusted garden shop where you can ask and get answers to your questions. Now, if you think you might have accidentally planted an invasive species in your garden or yard, she says to go ahead and pull it out before it spreads. And for infestations like the ones at Greenfield Lake, getting rid of those plants can be tough. So to do it safely, Doyle recommends getting help from places like the New Hanover County Cooperative Extension.
Okay, and this is an expensive problem as well because we have people who work for the county out there trying to fight these plants, right?
The county, I reached out to them today, and they say it takes about 200 man-hours just to fight invasive species at Airlie Gardens alone.
Wow.
That's not even the whole county.